Roti Prata isn't just a dish. It's a crispy, golden staple of daily life in Singapore. Along with Renjie, I am going to explore its many variations and discover why it holds such a special place in the heart of the locals here. So Renjie, when I asked you about Roti Prata the last time on the last episode, you mentioned three things. You mentioned breakfast, you mentioned supper,
yes,
and you mentioned technical.
Yes.
So first break down, how can a dish be a breakfast dish and also a supper dish?
Yes. So I think to answer that question, it would help to first talk about what Roti Prata is.
Yeah.
Okay, so Roti Prata is a South Indian dish that you find all across Southeast Asia. So it's very common in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore. And essentially what it is, it's a layered kind of a flatbread situation that is very similar to a Malabar paratha.
Okay.
Right. It was brought over by the Tamil Muslim community, and actually another name for roti prata that you find in the area is called Roti Canai.
Okay.
Because it came from Chennai. Exactly. Yeah. But it's a wonderful dish. It's neither roti nor paratha in the sense that sort of generally Indians think about, but it's a delicious dish that is found in a lot of 24-hour stalls. So places that sell roti prata tend to be, or oftentimes are, 24-hour shops. And I think it's for that reason that it's traditionally a breakfast dish. So you have it in the morning, and you have it with curry, or you have it as a sweet kind of version of it, sprinkled sugar on it, or condensed milk drizzled on it, or you have it very late at night. It's wonderful, as you can imagine a flatbread with curry would be. After you've had a couple of drinks, you want something to soak it all up, or just a greasy way to end the night, right?
Yeah.
It's perfect. So both breakfast and supper.
And you mentioned technical. Why is Roti Prata, which sounds very easy to me, a technical dish?
So I think that it's also a very affordable dish. It's a very common dish. It's not necessarily regarded as a very fine form of cuisine, but the way of making it is very technical in the sense of like a pastry, right? So it is layered, almost like a croissant. It's made from a very specific type of flour with wheat starch in it, and it has a very specific hydration, so amount of water in it. They leave it to age overnight, so not quite ferment in that it doesn't rise like a fermented bread would, but it does deepen in flavor. So there's a very particular flavor of almost fermented starch that you get in there that's wonderful when you cook it in a lot of ghee. And so that whole process of making it is technical because it requires all of these steps. And the last step to it is shaping the paratha. So they stretch it out almost like a pizza dough would be stretched out, but far thinner, to like a crepe-like kind of thinness. And then they sort of shape it into a round circle. And you can have a regular sized paratha, or you can have different types of paratha, like a coin paratha, which is really small, or a plaster paratha, which is plastered with egg, or even a tissue paratha that is so thin and it's folded in a big cone, and it's just a single layer as opposed to folded up together. So it's a highly technical pastry, I would say on par with French pastry.
Oh, wow.
In my mind anyways.
And it's quite budget friendly, right?
Very much so. So I mean, it's like $1-ish, I would say, depending on the permutation and combination. Obviously, the one that has Nutella on it is going to be a little bit more expensive. The one that has like egg is going to be a different price, but it's very affordable, it's very accessible.
And so I can imagine that Singapore has a lot of these places. So what are some of RJ's favorite places?
So, amazing place to have prata in my mind is this place called Mr. and Mrs. Mohgan's Super Crispy Prata. I think that's the name. But the important part is super crispy because they make these parathas in usually the coin size.
That's it.
That's it. They have a few different versions, but they're famous for their coin size. And it's well known for being super crispy. So they crisp it up kind of almost on like the tawa in a lot of ghee, and to the point where it's almost like a hard sear. And so when you bite into it, it shatters, and the coin paratha tends to be a little bit thicker. So you have that contrast between the sort of glassy exterior, the really sort of chewy interior, and then you have it obviously with curry or with sugar, which is the way I personally like it. Bonus that it's also in Joo Chiat, which is a wonderful part of town, very much worth visiting with a lot of cool cafes and restaurants and, like shops to look at.
Before we recorded this episode, you said that we should do a trip to Singapore, and it's going to be Singapore your way. I'm sure there are going to be a few Roti Prata places.
It's Mr. and Mrs. Mohgan Super Crispy Prata is definitely going to be on there, and you have to go super early.
Yeah.
So we'll set up our alarms very, very early so that we can beat the crowd.
I'm sure that'll be fun. Awesome. You mentioned Roti Prata or Roti Canai as a dish that you can have for supper after a few drinks. So the next episode is going to be about drinks. It's going to be about a cocktail that Singapore is known for. It's featured on many documentaries.
Are you talking about the Singapore Sling?
Yep. The next episode is about the Singapore Sling. So the next time, I want you to tell us the history and everything that is to do with the Singapore Sling.
Our national drink.
Let's go.